All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video as NFL scout Tony Pauline stopped by with Steph Sanchez and had a very interesting live stream talking about the upcoming NFL draft. We will share with you what he said and talk a lot of Niner ball next. Of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Also, this video is sponsored by our friends at Aura, and we'll have a word from Aura in just a minute. All right, first, let's get into the story of the day, and that is that Tony Pauline, NFL scout, who seems to be somewhat plugged in on the 49ers, stopped by with Steph Sanchez on her channel and talked a little bit about the upcoming NFL draft. And Tony is a guy that we should be listening to. Why? Because Tony last year told us, hey, man, Niners really like Isaac Guerendo, and they're going to take him in the third round. The Niners ultimately did like Isaac Guerendo. They didn't take him in the third round. They took him in the fourth round. The topic of that report came up in this live stream, and Tony said, I got my hand slapped on that. So basically a report came out saying that the Niners had interest in Guerendo. Then he took the report back 24 hours later. Obviously, the Niners did have interest in Guerendo, and the rest is history. So Tony is a guy who's definitely in the know. He's a longtime NFL scout. He's got his ear to the he's got his finger on the pulse of the NFL talk and what's going on behind the scenes. And so he stopped by with Steph, and the first question that came up with the draft approaching, Tony, what are you hearing about the 49ers at number 11? And he started talking about Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle from Ole Miss, that the Niners really like Walter Nolan at 11. And, if that's the case, then the Niners are going to get Walter Nolan because that's probably, at least 10 to 15 spots before he may go. But they like him. He said there may be some off-field concerns that they're probably looking into, but they really like Walter Nolan. It's funny, too, because Greg Cosell from NFL Films described Walter Nolan as very similar to Jalen Carter of the Eagles. And obviously Carter was a fantastic player with the Eagles and has led them to a Super Bowl. And Walter Nolan would be a fantastic player for the 49ers. So the first name he said tied to the 49ers is he hears the Niners have interest in Walter Nolan, which should make a lot of people happy because Nolan is one of the real popular picks in the mock drafts surrounding the 49ers. Now, the other name that Tony threw out is probably not going to make people happy, and that is Shemar Stewart, the defensive end from Texas A&M. And a lot of people don't like Shemar Stewart, and the reason they don't like him is he didn't have a lot of great sack production at Texas A&M. He was productive. He had a motor that really, revved high. He played hard, but his hand usage was inconsistent. And even though he led A&M in pressures, he never had more than 1.5 sacks in any season. He played at 6'5", 280, but he missed an awful lot of tackles this year. So I will say this. I do like Shemar Stewart. He's good against the run and the pass. The motor he's got a rare combination of major pass rush talent and athletic talent and a motor against both the pass and the run. So I do believe his best football is ahead of him. And I don't think, he's a rare athletic creature. I mean, he's an explosive athlete off the ball. There's no question. He's got long arms, natural power. He can shake free but he has, and he's been a guy that plays his butt off for all 4 quarters. His nickname is the Menace. And there's no question this guy is a competitor. He's a versatile guy. He can set the edge in the run game. He needs to be coached up. This is a D-line pick for sure, and Tony even said it. If Chris Kasarik and Robert Saleh love Shemar Stewart, then Shemar Stewart probably is going to be their pick. But Walter Nolan and Shemar Stewart are the 2 names that Tony Pauline is hearing tied to the 49ers. Other interesting nuggets that came out in this live stream. One, the Niners, according to Tony Pauline, like the cornerback Dorian Strong from Virginia Tech, who's a day 2 corner. He's a big press man corner with, big time athleticism. There's no question about that. Very, very athletic player. And, big corner, press man experience. And he's a guy, according to Tony, that the 49ers like, and they may take him in on day 2 of the draft. So what does that mean? Does that mean round 2? Well, it either means round 2 or round 3. But Dorian Strong is a good corner. I've seen him a couple of times this year. I haven't done any real extensive work on him, but I definitely think he's an interesting player. Now, I had him behind quite a few corners. I had him behind Benjamin Morrison, behind Jacob Parrish, behind Noel Williams, behind Shavon Revel, behind Trey Amos, behind Maxwell Harrison. So I was looking at him as more of a early day 3 corner. But Tony says the 49ers really like him and that they may take a look at him in, on day 2 of the draft. So interesting prospect for sure. 6'1", 185. He's a 5th-year senior. He's from Maryland, Upper Marlboro, Maryland. And, he's definitely an interesting player as far as, if you look at his talent, 5-year starter at Virginia Tech. And he was the field corner in Brent Pry's coverage scheme. So we'll see. I'll read more about him and see his testing. They measured him at 6 feet 185, with almost 31-inch arms, and he ran a 4.50 40. He had a 1.57 10-yard split. He had a 36-inch vertical, which is pretty good. So that 4.5 40 is totally mediocre, though. And we'll see. Tony says they like Dorian and they like him more as a day 2 guy. We'll see if they go for him on day 2 of the draft. So that was interesting out of Tech. So they like the big press man corner, cover corner, Dorian Strong, possibly on day 2. Tony was asked, do you think the Niners will trade up? He says, I'd be more surprised if the Niners traded up than if they traded down. He says a trade down is more likely. He said if the Niners do trade up, it could potentially be for Mikael Williams. He said if the Jets decide, if Armand Membu is not there for the Jets with the 7th pick, the Jets may trade out of that spot and the Niners may trade into that spot. And he's guessing it might be for Mikael Williams from Georgia, which would not make me happy because I'm not a big Mikael Williams fan. Steph asked him as well about Ola Dejo, who Tony has reported the Niners have interest in, former inside linebacker who played defensive end for UCLA. And he said, man, very confident guy. He's got huge upside, smart guy, athletic rusher, coached by KJ Wright. Had a formal meeting with the Niners at the Combine, and Tony crystallized it perfect. He said, here's the question. Is Ola Dejo worth their high 2nd-round pick? Is he worth picking at 43? And then if he's not, and I don't think he is, then is he there in the 70s? Is he there at pick 75 when they pick again in the 3rd round? I don't think he's going to be there in the 3rd round. So if you want Ola Dejo, you're probably going to have to use the 43rd pick, or you're going to have to trade down in round 2 and take him a few picks later. But that will be something to watch for. Steph also asked him about linebackers, and I think this is a great draft for linebackers, and I think it's highly likely the Niners fill their need at linebacker. And she asked Tony, who do you think's a good fit for the Niners at linebacker? He named 3 guys. He started with Demetrius Knight of South Carolina. He said he's nasty. He's a nasty player, would be great in the Niners system. He went on to mention the Buckeyes linebacker Cody Simon. Said he's probably a round 3 or round 4 guy. Nick Martin from Oak State. He said another guy who plays violent football, violent attitude. He's like more of a day 3 guy, round 4 or round 5. He was also asked about Teddy Buchanan, the former St. Ignatius Wildcat and UC Davis Aggie and Cal Bear. And he says, you know what? He's a midday 3 guy, round 5, round 6. He said he had an amazing year this year. He was a street free agent coming into the year, but he plays so hard, tested really well, 4.6 speed. He says he's a 3-down linebacker. He likes him a lot. But he said Teddy Buchanan's likely going in round 5 or round 6. When she asked him about Mike Green as a potential fit with the Niners, he asked the question that I'm asking, which is how does a guy that size hold up on 1st and 2nd down out of a 3-point stance in the run game? And I just don't think he does. She asked him about running backs for the Niners that would fit the Niners, and she threw out Cam Scattaboo and Jaden Blue as the fits that she thought was good. Tony threw out LaQuint Allen from Syracuse and another guy, Brashard Smith, who's one of my favorites from SMU, the converted wide receiver, who I would convert back to wide receiver. He ran 4.39. He's 5'11", 195. He's a smallish player, but he's an explosive player, and he probably is going to be there on day 3. And then Tony was asked, how about wide receiver at the for the 49ers on day 3? And he's like, well, there's guys like Andrew Armstrong or Isaac Tesla from Arkansas. But, the big question with the Niners is, will the Niners use a 3rd-round pick on a wide receiver? Because he thinks most of the day 3 wide receivers are more developmental. So that's interesting if the Niners share that belief. And then he was asked about tight end to finish up. And, it's funny, Steph Sanchez said, hey, the Niners have talked to Jackson Hawes and Harold Fannin Jr. and Jalen Conyers, and who's there a linebacker that fits them. And Tony threw out 3 names. He said Joshua Simmons, who he really likes. And I got to study Joshua Simmons. Haven't seen him. Aronda Gadsden from Syracuse and Thomas Fedone from Nebraska as guys that might be good fits for the 49ers on day 3 of the draft at tight end. So of that group, I haven't seen Simmons, but Tony sounded really excited about him, so I want to check him out. But Aronda Gadsden, I have seen. And Aronda Gadsden, I think, would give the Niners a weapon that they don't have. What do the Niners need to get in this draft? They got to improve their D-line, got to improve their offensive line, got to rebuild their linebacking core. But they also got to find some dynamic playmakers on offense and at any position, tight end, wide receiver, running back. Brashard Smith would be great. Aronda Gadsden would be great. So both those guys, I think, really fit the bill for what the Niners potentially could be looking for on day 3, skill position guys that could potentially make an impact. So just to summarize this, the real meat and potatoes of this video is that Tony Pauline is really clued in on the 49ers. And he says that the Niners are choosing at 11 between Walter Nolan and Shemar Stewart, and that they like cornerback Dorian Strong out of Virginia Tech on day 2, big press man cover corner. And he said he'd be more surprised if they traded up than if they traded down. He says a trade down is more likely. If they trade up, he's guessing that it could be for one of the Georgia guys, Mikael Williams or Jalon Walker, and he thinks Mikael Williams is a better fit for the Niners system. So that's it right there. It's very interesting. He said, be very interesting to see where the quarterbacks go in this draft. Shedeur Sanders, he says, has a weak arm. Jalen Milrose got great athleticism, but he needs development. Jackson Dart, he said, man, I really don't like Lane Kiffin quarterbacks. Lane Kiffin's quarterbacks rarely produce in the NFL. So I thought that was interesting. But the big news, Walter Nolan and Shemar Stewart, it sounds like, according to Tony Pauline, are the 2 guys that the Niners are really choosing between at number 11. And Dorian Strong, a cornerback from Virginia Tech, is somebody to look for possibly coming to the Niners on day 2. And the Ola Dejo comment is just, they really like him, but probably not enough to take him at 43. The question is, will they trade back and stay with Ola Dejo? Will they use their 2 third-round picks to trade up, possibly in the 2nd round, to try to get Dorian Strong in round 2? So that is something to look for as well. All right, thanks to Steph Sanchez for having Tony Pauline on. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. And now a word from our sponsor, Aura. And thanks to Aura for sponsoring this video. And thanks to all of you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.